share my screen in here. And talk a little bit about myself. So if you didn't know already, my name is Bronson. My name is Bronson Empsall. I'm going into my sophomore year at Florida State University, and I'm part of a neurodiversity club called the NeuroUnity Alliance Society. I'm the outreach coordinator there. And I'm also an intern at SRQ Strong, kind of running the social media and a lot of the outreach. And I just had a blast doing that this summer. But I especially, I'll get into that a little bit later, but I especially want to talk about my co-sponsors here today. So first of all, Also Youth, an amazing local organization. There, Caitlin, kind of empowering LGBTQ youth and their allies. And they just have tons of great programs to get people involved. But one of my favorite is their free counseling that they offer. And that means they have 5 contracted counselors that serve youth and their families, people like that, with no insurance, no wait lists. Just they can meet with them either virtually at their centers, at their place of practice. I think that's very important because cost and transportation are some of the biggest barriers to people getting help and getting diagnosed and getting treatment. So having something like that is absolutely incredible. Coming for someone where those barriers put me off from getting help for a long time. And also, just want to plug, they have an event coming up called the Expressions Exhibition, September 5th at the Sarasota Opera House. Looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. A youth art show and silent auction, just supporting young artists in the area. So absolutely go check out Also Youth and their socials and check out this event. And then my other co-sponsor here, I've been with them the longest out of all of these. I actually found out about both of these other organizations through them. Healthy Teens. Healthy Teens, I'll be with them 4 years in December. They're a local peer-to-peer education service, basically training teens to educate other teens. And I've just had so many great experiences and opportunities and meeting people. I wouldn't be here presenting today, talking to all of you without, the experience I've gained being in Healthy Teens. So a lot of thanks to them. I started out as a teen health educator, just volunteering as much time as I could in 10th grade. And now today I'm a young adult leader. I manage other teen health educators. And I just finished up with the summer program with 2 sessions of my time. And I'm very grateful for them coming here to co-sponsor me today. It was actually at a Healthy Teens Award show that I met Dr. Andy Blanche, who is here today, and kind of one of the founders of SRQ Strong. And it took, meeting her and I was still thinking about SRQ Strong, kind of going off to college. And I decided, to just ask if she had any open spots for an intern position. And now here I am today working with them. And I found that SRQ Strong is just absolutely incredible. They're a local organization, Sarasota Manatee, kind of focused on, building up a trauma-informed community. So educating, supporting people along their trauma journey. And my job has really been trying to make trauma-aware resources available to people, make it accessible, and promote events on the social media. We're currently working on helping people in the aftermath of Hurricane Debbie. So going to a multi-agency resource center in Sarasota. And we also have this program through our trauma specialist, Helen, called Letting Go of a Traumatic Past, kind of an 8-week workshop designed to help people, especially, in the aftermath of hurricane effects here in Florida. But yeah, please check us out if you know anyone that this workshop would be helpful for. And yeah, let's get started. All right. So I was loving everybody's responses in the beginning there. What is normal, really, right? But also, what is the diverging from normal? So neurodivergence, that's what it really just means. Anything that's not in neurotypical and neurodivergent are defined in opposition to each other. And something that confused me a lot was neurodivergent versus neurodiversity. I didn't even know they were two different terms at first. But neurodiversity refers to everyone, and neurodivergent minds plus neurotypical minds kind of together. I like this little diagram right there. And basically, neurodivergence, a lot of people think it's just autism and ADHD or something like that. That's what neurodivergence is. But it is just any condition, and we're going to look at that in a second. Anything that's not the neurotypical, and some traits that fall into normal, as people were saying. It's the ability to kind of follow social norms, follow social cues, reading body language, not having sensory issues, and having typical emotional responses to things. You're happy, you laugh; you're sad, you cry, you frown. Then also executive function, which is the ability to manage just everyday tasks, doing your laundry, doing the dishes, things like that. It doesn't cause extra stress or anything like that. And these are some of the umbrella of different disorders that can fall under neurodivergence. And as you can see, the two symbols on the sides, I just want to make a point of this. The official symbol for neurodivergence is the rainbow infinity symbol on the left there. And on the right, if you can see, that is the puzzle pieces, which is something that's still kind of used, especially to represent autism. But we don't really look upon favorably because it's the idea of someone has a piece missing from their life, having a disorder, that kind of thing. So the idea of changing how we're looking at it in a way of different, just differing from the norm, is kind of the model. And I did want to note that, as you can see in the bottom left corner there, PTSD is included. People suffering PTSD and CPTSD, which is complex PTSD, is included under neurodivergence. I think it is a little bit different when we're looking at things like ADHD and autism. I think those two are the most talked about because they're most part of your personality and who you are, and kind of shaping that. And with things like PTSD, CPTSD, there's much more of a focus on treating it and helping cure it and prevent it, where that's not at all where we look at things with ADHD and autism. And that goes into the idea of, is neurodivergence a disability? This is a bit controversial. We're going to look at two stances here, the medical model and the social model of looking at that, and then a combined model. And so first I want to talk, looking at this image here, we look at some squirrels and we look at some rabbits. So would we consider, the rabbit disabled if it wasn't able to climb up a tree as fast as a squirrel? Or would we consider a squirrel disabled, if it wasn't able to hop around like a bunny? We wouldn't, right? Because it's the idea of people have different strengths and different ways that they go through life. So that's the idea of just different, not less. And the idea important of different versus dysfunctional. Is what you're doing, actually harmful to yourself, or is it just a different way that may be, hampered by neurotypical standards? So looking at the two models here, the medical model says neurodivergence is a problem that needs to be fixed. This is the model that whispers to you and says like, oh, I'm so sorry, autism. Oh my gosh, it's horrible. That kind of thing. Where the social model says neurodivergent problems come from the lack of accommodation. The only difficulty is the tension between neurodivergent minds, neurodivergent needs, and a neurotypical society. So when we're kind of thinking here, probably everyone's leaning towards the social model as a little bit more accurate. But I will say, I don't think either one has the complete truth here. The medical model, I just use an example, applied behavioral analysis, which is basically a treatment often used for autism that's focused on changing behavior. And to a lot of people, it's seen as abusive and distressing because, the behaviors that they're doing aren't necessarily distressing inherently. It's the fact that it's seen as different. It's not seen as, normal, that it needs to be changed. But then also looking at the social model, taking ADHD medication, things like that. Even if I was in the most accommodating environment, I probably wouldn't be able to pay attention to stuff as well as, someone without the deficits that I have. So taking medication, something like that to, help my behavior, help my attention, help my focus, that would help me function better. So that's the idea of, oh, I'm missing a slide here. Anyway, the biopsychosocial model, which is including both, taking meds to help in the deficit areas, but also, and let's take a moment to kind of look at the biology behind ADHD, which, if you didn't know already, stands for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. There's actually two parts there. There's the inattentiveness and there's the hyperactivity. You can have one or the other, or you can have both. But the main underlying factors behind that is dopamine, which is a control chemical in the brain. And with ADHD, you have lower dopamine levels than someone without ADHD. And basically what that means is your brain is always seeking out, stimulation, whether that's through attention, your brain doesn't want to do homework already, but then you have that increased, decreased chemical level, and it becomes almost distressing and painful to have to do like a task that your brain doesn't want to do. So that's why it's just so much easier to take the path of least resistance, go play video games instead. And it looks like laziness. It looks like, you don't even care, but really it's just like, that's the least stressful thing you can do. And then we're also, the hyperactiveness that comes from just on the physical side. So your brain wants to get, physical stimulation, and sitting there, being a good student, crossing your hands and everything like that. That's not giving you the stimulation you need. That's distressing. You have to just sit there, not do anything. So you have to kind of move around a little bit, or fidget, or stem, or something like that, just to get the baseline. And that's why I have a little cube with me. Oh, I don't know if you can see it, a cube with me right now to kind of fidget with my hands while I'm speaking today. All right. So now you've got a little bit more understanding of ADHD. Oh, actually, one more thing I wanted to notice. Sorry, I'm a little distracted. Is the frontal lobe is a little bit less developed. Also, we can see, so in a brain level, even when you put on medication, things like that, on a brain level, you will literally be thinking and acting differently, no matter what you are. So yeah, that's the biopsychosocial model I was talking about, putting everything together, acknowledging, that I have a deficit for attention, but also that there are a lot of times where society kind of needs to be more accommodating, be more changing. So going back to the squirrels and the rabbits, everyone has their own needs, but it does feel at points in life like everything's kind of like a tree climbing contest. You're gonna need things like that. So I feel like if I was a rabbit and I had to climb a tree, I wouldn't mind some sick robot legs to kind of propel me up and get a little bit better at the competition there. And this is a quote I really like: if you feel accommodated in your environment, if you feel like you can do the things you want to do in your environment, you are not disabled. So it's a little bit of how you look at it. All right, and let's just take a peek at some positives from neurodivergence, because I think we spend a lot of time focusing on that negative side of things. It's like what you can't do as someone neurodivergent, but I think we don't focus on how everyone has their own strengths and things like that. So just some general ones here. One I really like is thinking outside of the box, because a lot of times all the thinking is outside of the box. It's formed outside of the box in the first place, and some personal ones that I find, adaptability. When I'm hyperactive, when I'm going, I feel like I can handle anything that's being thrown at me. And spontaneity, that can be seen as a negative symptom a lot of time for ADHD, but also I've had some great experiences in my life from just saying like, yes, let's do this. Let's go out. You know what? I was feeling a little bit tired, but maybe let's hang out tonight. And then I made some friends that, I'm still talking to, maybe some lifelong friends. And then we got the next thing, hyperfocus, which, how they say sometimes that neurodivergence is a superpower. This is probably the closest thing I have to an actual superpower, an ability. It's basically taking every bit of focus that I have in my body and putting it onto one thing and just dedicating all my time, blocking out everything else. And it really feels like you charged up your whole essence to like finish that one thing. Hyperfocus kind of helped me put together the presentation and write all these notes and everything like that. I won't lie. And then also a love of life and vibrancy and having a breadth of interests. Like I said, I was a little spontaneous before I go off to the side. So I watch a lot of movies, all kinds of different genres. I listen to a lot of different music. I catalog my music. I make lists out of it. I love listening to a bunch of different genres and things like that, from death metal to samba, all across the spectrum. I do a lot of things with clothes, vintage clothing, looking at different clothing. I sell clothes with my dad. And I do a little Mongolian throat singing on the side. Just some things to keep me occupied, the random stuff. Uh, uh, Basically, I'm always trying to do something, even though sometimes my eyes can be a little bit bigger than my stomach. I'm never really going to be bored because I have things I can do. And multitasking. I'm actually incredible at multitasking, I would say. Uh, oh, okay, maybe I'm not the best multitasker, but I am good, like I said, when I'm going at keeping threads together, going from one thing to another to another. Oftentimes I'll have a couple different projects strewn out in front of me that, I get the motivation for one, I get the motivation for another. And I think that's really great for brainstorming, for keeping that creativity, like we talked about a little bit ago. And this is just something I really like. Like I said before, a lot of your strengths are going to be personalized. So these are how a couple different conditions can, give you different strengths, things like that. So going back to the title, we've, gone through, we got a nice base to talk about stuff. Resilient minds. Why did I call it resilient minds? Well, I think that resilience is inherent to survive as someone neurodivergent, in a society that's kind of not built for you at a lot of times, where you have to adapt, you have to, bend yourself a little bit. And I think it falls in line a lot, like I said, with SOQ Strong and toolkit of trauma and resilience. So we're going to talk about that. Basically, trauma is not just PTSD. It's not just the stuff that we can clinically diagnose, but it's your body's reaction to toxically stressful stuff, something so stressful that your body feels like it has to retain it and be ready for it and things like that. A chain of events in your life. And the resilience is your ability to work through that stress and trauma and continue moving forward with your life. And I will say that ADHD and autistic minds, I saw a study on this, they seem to have an inherent vulnerability to trauma. So the internal resilience is already a bit lowered. And I think that's why it's important for the rest of the presentation to talk about ways you can accommodate yourself, ways you can build up some of that external resilience, make yourself better off. And looking at some of the traumas that can come up from being a neurodivergent and such. Conformity strain and masking, very closely related things. Conformity strain I see as, that stage of I'm not neurodivergent. I'm just neurotypical, and I have to work through it to be normal. I just have to, that happened to be a lot of times where it almost seemed like before I was diagnosed, where it would seem pretty obvious that I have ADHD, but I'd be thinking, no, I just need to, put a little more effort. I just need to focus on being more normal. And I guess that's called masking. A lot of the times it's when you mask your neurodivergent traits and you act, neurotypical. And that's, for example, focusing on staying still, focusing on looking someone in the eyes, focusing on on acting like there's nothing wrong with you and you're just another neurotypical kid. But masking is super stressful. Masking is not very healthy at all. And what is way more healthy is just being yourself. because there's nothing inherently distressing about the traits that I just said. There's nothing, wrong with that. It is, like we said, it's just different. It's not dysfunctional. It's just different. And also when we're talking about social isolation, that can come a lot of times, when someone's acting different, they exclude them from the group. It's like, oh, that guy talks weird or whatever, you can have that all the time. And people, they want to socialize, but they can feel like they're not getting, the same amount of treatment as other friends would, or things like that. They're not being hung out with. And on the flip side of that is the pressure to socialize. Like we said, some people have a lower threshold for socialization. So they feel like they don't have to socialize as much, but there might be that pressure, go to the party, go hang out with your friends more. When really they just want to, take some time and be with themselves and, kind of that more introverted side. But there's, it can be more stressful to have to go out and socialize and things like that. And then acute stress. This is the idea of a constant state of anxiety, trying to avoid mistakes. Part of that is trying to avoid seeming like you're neurodivergent. So you're constantly monitoring your own behavior. You're like, oh no, that interaction, was that weird? Did I come across as weird to them? Or it can be a sense of perfectionism, which is how it came out a lot with ADHD for me. Basically, like I'd make a lot of mistakes. My attention would focus a lot, things like that. So I was very hyper aware of, the faults and the things that I did. I'd be wondering like, oh, did I mess up this paper? I have to revise it one more time. When I'm already on my 96th revision, of a very simple, straightforward assignment, and something like that. And I'm overthinking about it all at that point. And then, like I just said before, internalizing negative messages, the idea that because you're neurodivergent, you have a weak brain. I wish I had a good brain. I wish I wasn't like this. But you are who you are. You have the brain that you have. And so self-hatred is just going to lead to more self-hatred. You have to be accepting and loving. And this is where we fall into how to be supportive from, in reaching out to other people, how to be supportive of people neurodivergent, either as a neurotypical person or with other neurodivergent minds. First, I start with listen, and the idea of asking, not assuming. A friend told me a story of, going into a new job, and immediately the person, they told them that they were neurodivergent, and immediately it was like, oh, let me give you all these things that you need, your accommodations. And they were like, oh, I don't even really need all of this, but thanks, I'll take it anyway. It's the idea of not assuming what a person needs, or assuming what a person, what a person's faults or strengths are, based off of their identity of, having ADHD, or having autism, or having a learning disorder, or anything like that. And another one, avoiding value labels. The big one is, high functioning autism versus low functioning autism. Yeah, this is a hard one because it was literally a medical terminology, like not that long ago, a couple of years ago, and they just changed it. The idea is that adding value labels kind of it reinforces the negative messaging, and it creates this idea that someone is lesser because they don't have as many neurotypical traits. Maybe they have motor difficulties, maybe they have difficulties speaking, expressing themselves. That puts them on the lower functioning spectrum because they can't be seen as normal in society. And that's not downplaying the fact that people have deficits, people might be disabled by their condition at all. It's just the idea of how the terminology can be hurtful. And the idea is autism as a spectrum isn't a spectrum from high functioning to low functioning. It's a spectrum of your different abilities. And like we said before, different functioning. Universal design is this idea of creating an environment so it is built accommodating, not building a place with a bunch of stairs and then realizing afterwards you need to add in ramps for wheelchairs and things like that. It is building it in, like it says right there, universal design of learning or instruction. If you're around people already thinking about ways that you can be, helpful at service for different neurodivergent conditions. And these, just to specify these are things that I personally like. Uh, why did I choose that photo of me? I don't know. These are things that I personally like from the outside perspective. When people are patient with me, because I'm going to lose attention. I'm going to end up doing something else, and it's not a factor of whether I care about something or not. It's not a factor of like disrespect or something like that, which a lot of people do, especially teachers. They can bring the ruler down because you went off on a side conversation. But that wasn't my intent at all. It's just sometimes you get distracted, and the people that are patient, that stay calm with you, that I really respect. Just to put me back on track. Acknowledging effort. Some days the tasks aren't going to get completed. And acknowledging that I did put in effort, I did try. That can be helpful rather than like it says at the bottom, undermining the condition. That's again talking about the laziness. You didn't do anything, when it's like I did make the effort. I couldn't summon up enough to complete it. It's like there were all these other factors that distracted me along the way or got my attention. And then clear instructions. This is kind of almost a meme amongst neurodivergent people. This idea that neurotypical people talking code and like don't mean what they really say. And so being even over clear with instructions can be helpful, because like go over there and clean up your room. It's like, what does clean up my room mean? Does that mean like pick up the clothes off the floor? Does that mean you deep scrub, the baseboards and everything? Like what level of clean, what, all these things like that. Flexible deadlines. This one, it's a little bit weird because, it kind of almost counteracts with the one right below it, structure and routine. Well, how can you have structure if you want flexibility? Uh, like I said before, my brain isn't fully developed. My brain is not going to be fully developed for a little bit later than a lot of people, because frontal lobes develop slower as well. And I think having those flexible deadlines is just something really helpful. Mistakes happen. I'm still learning to get better with my doing things on time and my executive function. And I'm going to have moments where everything else I was doing good in my life, but I forgot this one thing. And if it's a strict deadline, all that does is just punish me for it. It doesn't, help me learn something new. Really, it's just punishing me for something that is a weakness of mine. But I do, like I said before, I do like structure and routine. I do like when things can be a little bit more laid out for me. So, just because I want a little bit more flexibility, just because I have ADHD doesn't mean I don't like having a calendar of all the tasks I should complete, and maybe some more individual things. Like I said, I love making lists. I love categorizing things. So yeah. And then looking at it from a personal perspective, if you are neurodivergent, really this is a personal journey. Very much neurodivergence, like you saw before, is such a broad term. It can mean a whole bunch of different things. And there's this idea of they say with autism, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. It doesn't generalize at all. Everyone has their own struggles and needs. So deepening your self-awareness, figuring out your own accommodations, figuring out what to ask for, that's kind of something you kind of need to do to get things done. And also doing the things that work for you. This is kind of the idea of talking about doing things differently. You don't need to feel like you need to do things the normal way or the hard way or something like that. If having a little basketball hoop above your laundry hamper that you can shoot stuff into, if that helps you do your laundry, do it like that. It doesn't matter how you do something. If it's getting it done, then it's getting it done. And just to talk personal, I'm going to talk a little bit about my diagnosis story while I have the chance. So ADHD, basically the symptoms started rising. It's a developmental disorder. The symptoms started rising in elementary school, very early on. And I didn't get diagnosed until I was 18, in the middle of senior year. So, there's a big gap there. And it took me a very long time to even recognize that I might have ADHD, which, it might be obvious to anyone who knows more about it, but to me, you know, looking at my internal perspective, that's all I knew, and I had no clue that I needed, you know, maybe some other kinds of support. I was just kind of working on whims. Um, I got punished a lot. I remember in elementary school for my hyperactivity. You know, it was a big thing. I'd be getting out of my chair, or I'd be, you know, moving around and be making noises or things like that. And you know, that's something that got me on, you know, written up. Got to talk to the parents or things like that. When really it was just something that was a natural part of me. It would actually end up going away a little bit more. I'm not as hyperactive as I used to be, but you know, knowing that I would have ADHD, knowing about that side of me would have been better to just be able to be like, oh no, I'm not just being annoying. You know, I'm you know, I have a lower dopamine level. I have things that make me want to fidget and stuff like that. Um, and then it took like middle school or so for me to kind of have a self recognition to realize like, oh, like I started watching videos and things like that. I started having this kind of content pop up about ADHD. And I started thinking like, wait, why is this so relatable? You know, why does this feel like it's talking about my life right now? I'd never had that level of relatability to something before. And so I started looking into it more, but I didn't tell my parents, you know, because it felt like something shameful still. Like there wasn't a good, like, you know, I felt like because I wasn't already diagnosed, there was no way, you know, this is something they catch when you're younger. There's no way I could have, you know, didn't slip through the cracks. You know, I must just be neurotypical. I must be dealing with some laziness or something like that. And it took, you know, experiencing all the stress of high school and things like that. And I will also say I was a good student through everything to kind of break that stereotype. There's a big stereotype, you know, that you have to be the burnt out, like uh, uh, gifted kid or something like that. But no, I kept doing good all throughout school. What a lot of people didn't see was all the stress, the bottling up that I did in private, and like kind of blaming myself, kind of creating that toxic stress, like we talked about before. And it took until almost like an explosion of that in senior year when, you know, all the deadlines were due, all the college stuff was due. And I felt like my world was caving in for it, me to finally like start talking about all my mental health struggles and talking about, you know, ADHD and getting diagnosed with more passion to my parents. And from that point on, I've only been getting better with everything because once I could recognize, once I could get diagnosed, I could start taking pride in being neurodivergent. And I think that's a very powerful thing. And, you know, accepting who you are. And you know, I was able to identify what works for me. I think this is an important note of I was doing things that were helpful to to people with ADHD before I knew I had ADHD, you know, before I got diagnosed. And I think that's an important point is you don't need the label to start doing things that you know might work because at that point it doesn't matter if something works for you, it works. So kind of looking at that, figuring it out doesn't have to take place after, you know, the whole diagnosis side of things. And then also, sorry, that was a big journey we just took. I'm gonna just take a sip of water. Ah, also, pushing through procrastination. This is something I'm still trying to do. It's having to, you know, I think this is also leads into the different dysfunctional lead of things. So this falls into dysfunctional. You know, it's not just different. You know, the whole putting things off and doing it later. Once I could recognize that what I was doing was procrastination and that's an unhealthy behavior, that's something I actually did need to work on, need to change. And so the idea is you don't want to just rely on your hyper focus to study in the last hour before the exam, or you know, to complete an assignment, a paper that was supposed to be worked on the entire school year the night before, that kind of thing. Because what is that? That's a toxic amount of stress all in one. You know, that's just going to wreck your mental capacities. And what happens when that doesn't work? You know, this system that you've all done, you put in all this energy, you've wrecked yourself, and in the end, it you know, you just run out of time, and you're not able to complete it. That was basically why my world started to collapse at the end there, because I was procrastinating everything, and that system didn't work anymore. So recognizing that, pushing through the procrastination, it's going to be stressful. It's not gonna be fun at all. But just getting little things done, that was a big thing for me. Baby steps. And you can still rely on your hyper focused thing to get a lot of work done, but the idea is don't let it be everything all at once. And then also headphones for work. I wear my headphones all the time, and that's a big thing for stimulation for one. Hearing music, especially without words, to get me distracted, just music pulses of stuff, that puts me in the zone to be able to just focus on stuff. And I remember for a while I was like, I had to sit at the brightly lit desk and everything like that. I had to be that kind of student, when sometimes I'm just better off sitting in a comfy chair, laying back and like curled up some weird way, trying to write everything down. Yeah. And working on perfectionism, this is a huge one for me. And going back to that acute anxiety, that is a dysfunctional behavior that kind of arises from toxic stress. Kind of over monitoring yourself. Working on that perfectionism is a big thing, and just picking a certain point and letting things be finished, rather than having to constantly over revise and criticize and take that to heart and everything like that. All right, so that's everything. We covered a lot there. We covered terminology. We covered models of neurodivergence. Covered a little bit on the biology behind everything. We covered the resilience and trauma applied onto neurodivergence, and we covered how to be supportive to others and yourself at the same time. Now, do you have any questions? I think I did see a couple comments. Let me go to that. Okay.
Hey, Bronson, I'm going to stay off camera because I'm snacking throughout this. But that was
all good.
that was wonderful. I have I have 4 adult children, and 2 definitely struggled with ADHD and misophonia and just different types of I don't even know, challenges, or I don't know, I don't even I'm getting tired, but just struggles academically. But I think one of the major issues that I had was just literally constantly dealing with the schools and trying to have them put those safeguards in place, those accommodations in place. And it was just demoralizing, for them, and difficult for me, because, they would implement these changes for them, but they would never, on paper, they would implement them, but they would never follow through. So I'm just wondering if you have any advice to parents as to how to, effectively collaborate with the schools, and, collectively collaborate with, other service providers to help their child.
It's actually a really good question. Wish I had a good answer to that.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Maybe we can talk about this more. Maybe I can message you.
Sure.
I'm gonna think about this a bit more, because my personal experience wasn't having to go through that. So it was just a lot of just pushing through it personally, and that wasn't very healthy. So I'm gonna have to think on that a little bit more. That's a really great question, though. I'm sorry I don't have a great answer for you off the top of my head.
It looks like
Yeah.
Andy might have unmuted herself, so I think she
Oh,
might
yeah.
have something
Andy?
to add here. Also, Bronson, if you want to go ahead and stop sharing your screen, that way we can see everyone a bit bigger here. That would be great now that we're talking to each other. Perfect. Andy, you want to go ahead and jump in there?
Sure. First of all, just thank you so much, Bronson. This was fantastic. I learned so much. Great job. My question actually was along the same lines as Marcelina. And I loved everything about the presentation, but I particularly liked the part where you were talking about how to be supportive to somebody who's neurodivergent, and like the clear instructions piece. I mean, that is so good. And what I was wondering is, when you first got diagnosed, or you first started realizing that you had a brain that was working differently, did your parents get any help in how to respond and how to be useful to you? I mean, did the pediatricians, did anybody who was working with you, did they simultaneously work with your folks about how to understand this and how to be supportive? Because it seems to me that that's such an important piece of all of this.
Yeah. I don't remember having any kind of systematic help like that. And my parents, they didn't know what to do. You know, that was a big thing. It was like I was coming through a realization, but a lot of the material there is geared at, you know, early diagnosis and then putting all the help there. And so being, you know, a full teenager now and having almost no clue where I should go, it was a very disorienting experience. And yeah, I kind of slipped through the cracks based on the stereotype of, you know, of being good in school and things like that. So yeah.
Okay, that tells me that there's an area that we should be working in, because families should know about this. Should be a basic part of parent education. So thank you.
And think about it, it may just be a systematic thing, a problem. You know, it might not be something I can conjure up and give you a solution for, you know, to get these things in practice, to get these things working.
You don't have to have the answer to everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Where the gaps are is incredibly important.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah. I see another hand up there. Is it Malak? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right. You're welcome to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask or comment.
I feel like my question was a little bit too similar to the others. I was more gonna like go in a more specific of like, how would you so sorry.
It's all good.
How would you, I guess from like a teacher's perspective, how do you think you would approach that, like knowing what you know now, how would you approach the situation of like you know, being misunderstood by your teachers in regards to being diagnosed late and it being framed as, you know, a behavior problem rather than you being neurodivergent?
Yeah, I've seen that a little bit when I'm managing stuff, even in healthy teens, you know, as a teen health educator. I like to look at things from a lot more patience and, you know, kind of a bit more, you know, and less of getting aggravated and getting angry as distractions arise, but more just continuing to write people on their course, kind of thing. Because you know, with that idea of being patient and recognizing that just because someone's getting off topic doesn't mean they're doing it to spite you necessarily, doesn't mean they're doing it to, you know, say they don't care about something. Sometimes they will. I mean, that's something I've seen from healthy teens, but still approaching it from that, you know, not assuming that everyone's doing that for the same reasons and still approaching it with patience. I had another thought. It was on, I can't remember now, but yeah, that was the main goal. Let's see. I thought Gina was going to say something.
Oh,
yeah, actually, I can't figure out how to raise the digital hand. So
that's okay. Yeah, we can go to Gina and then we'll come back to you, Caitlin, if that's all right.
Okay. So a couple of things. First of all, that was such an empowering presentation, and it was wonderful to listen to. So thank you for everything that you put in to that and for leading us through. In terms of the kind of both sides of the teacher piece, I think from the student lens, like one of the really important things a parent can do is try to figure out what's at the core, what the real situation is, rather than what the symptoms or surface level ones are. And I'll give a quick example. When my son was in second grade, he had to start going to a different classroom for math. Before that, everything was in one room. And transitions are really difficult for a lot of folks on the spectrum, including him. So the teachers automatically assumed that he was lazy, disorganized, wasn't trying, like all of those types of things. And all we needed to do was put his math book and notebook and a couple of extra pencils in a separate bag inside his backpack so he could grab that. when he left for math. It's such a simple thing, but before I even knew it was going on, there were weeks and weeks of him being shamed. So as a parent, really trying to figure out what, talk it through with your child and get to what is the real issue here, and then what are some things. And kids on the spectrum tend to be really excellent at helping with that problem solving piece. And then from a teacher lens, make the space, as Bronson was saying earlier, don't make assumptions, ask. But, if someone is more of an internal processor and isn't able to get into the class discussion, open the space by saying something like, I'd like to hear from 3 people who haven't spoken yet. And, just those types of things. And we can talk more, but I know a lot of people have comments and questions, so.
Just to give a quick shout out, Gina, I consulted on to kind of make this presentation. So a big thanks to Gina for coming here and giving that response and helping out there. All right. Caitlin.
Sorry, my cat just fell out of the window. So you said you were diagnosed when you were 18, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like 18, 19 now?
Yeah, I just turned 19 a month ago.
Okay, so you also said that it was like in middle school that you started seeing videos and stuff that kind of helped you realize that you might have ADHD. Do you think you would have realized you were ADHD without social media?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because I mean, so for example, I'm in the process of getting an autism diagnosis, and I can tell you for a solid fact, I probably never would have gone through the avenues to get a diagnosis without social media. Because you said, it was kind of like watching videos that made you go, is that my life? And it's just, I was wondering about your thoughts on social media and the influence and self-diagnoses and people finding the avenues to get diagnosed.
Yeah. I think along with social media, it's made people aware of things in the first place more. So people might be able to recognize the signs. But in general, put me back in, the 80s or whatever, when people didn't really know about this and no social media or anything like that. I definitely think I could end up, 40 years old, definitely having ADHD, but not, recognizing it all for a long period of time, because that was my dad. So yeah, that's basically him right now, what he's going through. Yeah.
I was doing math in my head. I was like, okay, so he's 18. Middle school was probably 6 years ago. Social media was around then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, Tom Edwards.
So thank you so much. I think the information that you shared tonight was impactful. What I loved the most about it was hearing it from your lens of the inside out. And that's your ability to be brave enough to share that and to be vulnerable and to describe it from the inside out. I live in a world of academics that are constantly trying to explain, here's what you need. And there's always IEP plans and all these plans, as opposed to really trying to hear it from the inside out. And to your point where you talk about listening, I'm so proud of your bravery and your vulnerability. I think the thing that we touched on here, which I think is it's a place I've seen also sorely lacking in our schools, is not enough parent engagement and what I refer to as parent cafes, where parents can actually talk to each other and share their experiences, no different than you've done. And I think one of the things that might be impactful as a follow-up, just to sort of talk about this, is maybe working with your parents or any other parents that you've encountered along the way to sort of get best practices or questions that would help create more pathways. So again, I can't say enough about your bravery, and thank you for sharing it from the inside out.
Thank you. That's really good advice there. And thank you so much. That was a big thing as part of this presentation was, my initial idea was to try and cover everything, and to cover it very scientific, and to cover it, trying to do everything at once. And I realized all I really have to do is tell my story, tell my own personal thing, and make it impactful. So I'm glad that was recognized, and thank you so much for sharing. It's some positive stuff. Wow.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments? I think there was one that kind of got buried in the chat here. Someone had said, is there a fatigue factor as part of your process?
Oh yeah, definitely a fatigue factor. I'd say with attention, that's something that gets worn out a lot easier. So paying attention to something for an extended period of time is gonna like completely drain me, when for someone else it might just be like, oh, it's a little boring, something like that. There's a lot more fatigue placed on me. And I remember just coming home from a day of like regular lessons, just completely like done, like feeling like, I can't do anything else, and completely stressed out. And yeah, the fatigue, that's a good point to make. Big. Yeah. Block.
I was gonna say that's a great point, but that actually reminded me of another question that I had that I kind of initially forgot. But when making your own presentations, do you think that you being neurodivergent yourself puts you in a position where you feel like you can more easily cater to more people when making these kinds of presentations?
Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Well, like in the sense of if you have to, like, when you were making this presentation, were you making it with, the fact that, other people who are neurodivergent might not be able to follow a presentation like this with as much information, and thus you wanted to make it as digestible as possible for everyone? Is what, like I was saying, does being neurodivergent make you feel like you have a better grasp on that?
That's okay. Yeah, I see your question now. I was definitely trying to break it down as much as I could to make it accessible, not make it too confusing or too complex or too sciencey or too anything like that. I think to what you said about neurodivergence is making it so it can apply to other people's experiences. I was recognizing that I'm not going to touch on everyone's experience. So I kind of focused a lot on my experience and telling that. But I definitely was trying to keep in mind making sure it was digestible to anyone who would come in here, from, neuroscientists to just my mom, Yeah. Any other questions?
Looks like someone just put in the chat, do you have advice for college students with ADHD on pushing through procrastination?
Yeah. And also a really sweet message from my mom. Okay, sorry. Do you have advice for college students with ADHD on pushing through procrastination? Oh, that is exactly what I'm trying to do right now. That is literally my life. Yeah. Like I said, baby steps, putting it down and the deadline down in whatever form works for you, whether that's, physical planner didn't work for me a lot of the time, but a digital calendar, that worked. And setting reminders. Maybe you want to set weekly reminders to keep thinking about a project. And, having those baby steps to just work a little bit on a project. Tell yourself, I'm just going to write the title. I'm just going to write like a summary of what I want to do. I'm just going to write down an idea, when you can. Taking a little step also tends to be a little bit of an ADHD hack, because sometimes you start with a little step and then you're like, wait, no, I have another idea. And then that puts you into the flow state every now and then. So yeah, try baby steps, try to figure out things that'll keep you aware of the deadlines. And yeah, that's the best thing I can pick up. Yeah, and reward yourself. Don't be afraid to reward yourself. Get a little treat when you did good.
And
Right.
getting a really good sense of when you're good at different things was really helpful to me personally. So like when I had to write a dissertation, that was like this huge thing. So I kept a time log for a week, and even if I got up to go get a glass of water, and then I kind of looked at it and figured, okay, when am I focused and when am I not? And anytime I need to do like really deep thinking and writing, it has to be in the morning. And then in the afternoon, I take care of things that are, a little bit quicker. And having a reality check buddy that I can call up and say, will you look at this and tell me if it's done? Because otherwise, like you were saying, I will revise it and revise it and revise it until, there's no ink left in the printer, and then I'll revise it again. So those are just a couple.
Oh yeah, thank you. Those are great. I would have said those if I had thought of them. Yeah, thank you. All right.
One last thing to add as a somewhat recent college kid, I say definitely break things up. If you have a 30-page chapter to read, and by Thursday, we'll read, 4 pages this hour and then 4 pages next hour. If you have like 20 math problems, do 3 this hour, take a break, do 3 more the next hour, because otherwise you hit burnout. So if you can break it up at all and hold yourself like accountable to those little breaks and be like, oh my God, I did 3 math problems, I can have a cupcake. Break up and then reward. It worked.
Good pattern.
The 5-song dance break got me through grad school. So I've gotten a lot of coffee, but you just kind of reset. But yeah.
I do think things like setting a timer as well. Like I'm just gonna do 20 minutes of work, something like that Pomodoro method, that whole kind of thing. Yeah. But yeah. All right.
Awesome questions and feedback, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and also sharing your stories too. This is what it's all about. I think someone in here put, I had seen, I think it was Kira. She said that, storytelling is so much more impactful, and, a 30-minute story will get through to someone much more than, an hour or 2-hour long presentation on some really impactful information, but the way it's absorbed is generally almost always through storytelling. And that's what we really like to focus on at SRQ Strong, and Bronson has really been an amazing part of the team, and we're really glad that he was able to share his story. So thank you, Bronson. I'll just add that. I don't know why my camera has failed me. I'm sorry, guys. I'm here. I'm just a voice in the wind. I'm your conscience.
Oh man, and it's warming my heart seeing all these comments here. Thank you guys so much.
Unless we have any other comments or questions, everyone's singing their praises here. And we did record this, so for anyone that may have hopped on late or maybe is tuning in from Facebook Live right now and didn't get to see the beginning or the entire presentation, this has been recorded, so we will send it out to anyone who's on our mailing list or who registered to watch this presentation. So don't worry, you will be able to rewatch it and tune back into all the great conversation that we had tonight. It's almost a nice haircut, Bronson.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Well, I think that's a good wrapping point. I'm just going to remind everyone real quick, we have a community conversation that's coming up in September.
Oh, yes.
So mark your calendars. It's going to be September 23rd from 6 to 7:30. It's going to be held on Zoom just like this. We're going to stream it on Facebook Live. And this one is focused on how disasters impact us and how we heal. So make sure that you look out for the advertising that we'll be putting out for that in the next week, and mark your calendars, and we'll send reminders out along with this recording. So thank you again, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you so much, Bronson, for sharing your story and for putting together such a great presentation. We really appreciate you and all of the community members for tuning in tonight. So everybody enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Have a great evening.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you so much for
coming.
Bye, guys.